What happens when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force? A meteor blazes through the void, a fiery harbinger of momentum and energy, slamming into a massive planet cloaked in timeless stillness. The planet does not shatter, nor does the meteor simply stop. Instead, molten debris erupts, shockwaves ripple across the surface, and both are transformed by the collision. What happens when energy cannot be destroyed, only reshaped? At the edge of a black hole, an object plunges toward the event horizon. To a distant observer, it stretches into eternity, frozen in time by the immense pull of gravity. Yet, to the object itself, the fall continues, undeterred into the singularity. How can motion and stasis coexist, each true from a different vantage point? Light races across the cosmos, unstoppable in its speed, but as it nears a massive celestial body, space-time bends, pulling the beam into a graceful arc. The light's path changes, not because it slows or halts, but because the medium itself reshapes the interaction. What if the forces we see as absolute depend entirely on the context in which they meet? A star burns brightly for billions of years, a fixed point of light in the night sky, yet over eons it exhausts its fuel, collapsing under its own gravity or exploding outward in a supernova. Time reduces even the most unyielding structures to ash or transforms them into new cosmic forms. Can anything truly remain unchanged when measured across the vastness of time? Two neutron stars spiral toward one another, their collision unleashing a cosmic symphony. Gravitational waves ripple through space-time as matter and energy fuse into something new, a black hole, or the scattered seeds of future stars. What emerges when forces too great to yield instead join together in creation? These cosmic moments reveal the paradox of the immovable object and the unstoppable force as more than a question of opposition. They show us that when such absolutes meet, the story isn't about destruction or victory, it's about transformation. Today we'll explore 5 ways to unravel this timeless puzzle: energy transfer, relativity, medium, time, and interaction. Through physics and quantum psychology, we'll uncover how these principles echo in our own lives. What if the greatest conflicts we face, whether within ourselves or the world around us, aren't obstacles to overcome, but catalysts for growth? Let's journey into the heart of this paradox and discover how the meeting of opposites holds the secret to change, creation, and the infinite possibilities of existence. The first approach to resolving the paradox of the immovable object and the unstoppable force draws inspiration from one of physics' most elegant principles. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, it merely changes form. This principle offers a path to understanding the paradox not as a collision of irreconcilable absolutes, but as a dynamic exchange where both forces transmute into something entirely new. Imagine a meteor hurtling through space at unimaginable speed, an unstoppable force slamming into the Earth's surface, which we view as immovable in this context. At first glance, the two seem destined for annihilation. Yet what truly unfolds is a magnificent transformation. The meteor's kinetic energy is released in a torrent of heat. Shockwaves ripple outward and debris erupts skyward. The Earth remains in its orbit and the meteor ceases to exist in its original form, yet neither energy nor force vanishes. Instead, they are reborn, morphed into new states that ripple across time and space. In this interplay, the collision is not a zero-sum game, but a crucible of creation, where apparent destruction births new phenomena. This same principle applies to the human psyche, as quantum psychology reveals. Within us, thoughts, emotions, and habits function as interwoven systems of energy, perpetually colliding with external forces such as new experiences, beliefs, or challenges. A deeply held conviction may stand as the immovable object in our inner world, while an unexpected insight or life-altering event sweeps in as the unstoppable force. The initial clash may feel like chaos, an eruption of tension, confusion, or even emotional pain, but beneath the surface, energy is shifting, reconfiguring, and transforming. Let's consider an example. Imagine a person whose worldview is shaped by a rigid belief in individualism. This belief, solid as bedrock, encounters the unstoppable force of a deeply communal experience, perhaps through cultural immersion or collective crisis. At first, the clash manifests as discomfort or resistance, like the heat of a meteor's impact. But if the person remains open to the process, their perspective doesn't simply crumble, instead it evolves. The energy of their old belief system transfers into a nuanced understanding of the balance between individual and collective needs. What emerges is not a shattered psyche, but a more complex and integrated self. Quantum psychology teaches that these moments of tension are not threats to our stability, but opportunities for transformation. When forces collide within us, the energy released can propel us into growth, much like the shock waves of the meteor's impact reverberate through the Earth. The psychological heat, inner turmoil, or cognitive dissonance is not a sign of failure but a crucible where new possibilities are forged. What was once perceived as incompatible can reveal itself as complementary when reframed through the lens of transformation. The immovable object and the unstoppable force, therefore, are not opposites locked in a futile struggle. Instead, they are collaborators in the alchemy of change. Their meeting point is a site of profound potential, where energy, whether physical or psychological, reshapes itself into forms that are novel, unexpected, and deeply meaningful. By embracing this process, we learn that the paradox is not a riddle to solve, but a dance to engage, a dynamic interplay that enriches and expands the scope of our being. Our second resolution to the paradox of the immovable object and the unstoppable force draws inspiration from the principle of relativity, an idea central to modern physics but profoundly resonant beyond the physical realm. Relativity teaches us that motion, stasis, and even force are never absolute. They are always measured in relation to something else. What seems immovable from one vantage point may be dynamic from another. Similarly, what appears unstoppable may, in a different context, encounter natural limits. Consider the Earth itself. To us, standing on its surface, the planet feels immovable, a steadfast anchor beneath our feet. Yet from a broader perspective, we know it is anything but still. The Earth rotates on its axis at dizzying speeds, races around the sun, and hurtles through the galaxy on an interstellar journey. The immovability we perceive is an illusion born of our limited frame of reference. By shifting perspective, the paradox dissolves into a larger understanding of motion and stasis as relative concepts. In the realm of quantum psychology, this insight deepens. Not only is the physical world shaped by perspective, but so too is our internal experience. As observers of our own lives, our beliefs, emotions, and cultural contexts act as frames of reference, defining how we perceive challenges, obstacles, and opportunities. Something we consider immovable in our psyche, a fear, a habit, a belief, might seem insurmountable from our own vantage point, yet seen through the eyes of another or within a different emotional or cultural context, that same obstacle may appear fluid, malleable, or even trivial. Imagine someone grappling with a deep-seated phobia, like a fear of public speaking. From their perspective, this fear is an immovable object, a fixed, unyielding barrier that has dictated their choices for years. Enter a new perspective, a compassionate friend, a skilled therapist, or even a single moment of personal courage. These influences act as an unstoppable force, challenging the phobia's immovability. Yet, through the principle of relativity, we see that neither the phobia nor the force exists in isolation. The transformation occurs within a shared frame of reference, where the energy of support and exposure reframes the fear not as permanent but as situational and ultimately conquerable. Relativity also sheds light on how our perceptions shift over time. Consider the heartbreak of adolescence, a tidal wave of unstoppable emotion that once seemed endless and all-consuming. With the passage of years and the accumulation of experience, that same heartbreak may appear in retrospect as a momentary ripple in a much larger ocean of life. Time and growth alter our vantage point, transforming what once seemed immovable into a distant memory. In this way, relativity teaches us that absolutes, whether emotional or physical, are rarely as rigid as they appear. The key lesson here is mental flexibility. By embracing the fluidity of perspectives, we gain the ability to shift frames of reference, to question absolutes, and to recognize that what feels intractable or overwhelming is often context-dependent. This mindset allows us to approach life's paradoxes not with resignation, but with curiosity. What once seemed like an unresolvable clash between unstoppable and immovable becomes an opportunity to expand our understanding of the interplay between context and perception. Relativity reveals a profound truth. There are no fixed absolutes in motion, force, or even meaning. Instead, life is a dynamic interplay of perspectives, where the paradoxes we encounter are not barriers but invitations to see more broadly, to think more deeply, and to grow beyond the limits of our current frames of reference. The third resolution to the paradox of the immovable object and the unstoppable force shifts our focus from the objects themselves to the medium through which they interact. It is within this space, the environment, the context, that the nature of their encounter is shaped and transformed. Imagine a massive boulder resting in a riverbed. To our eyes, the boulder appears immovable, a steadfast fixture resisting the constant flow of water. Meanwhile, the river flows endlessly, an unstoppable force carving its path. Yet, over time, we notice the truth. The water gradually erodes the rock, reshaping its edges, wearing it down particle by particle, or finding paths around it. The interaction isn't defined solely by the boulder's resistance or the river's persistence. It's mediated by the properties of the medium itself, such as the fluidity of the water, the mineral composition of the rock, and even the passage of time. Change the medium and the outcome shifts entirely. In a vacuum, a dense gas, or a solid matrix, the dynamics of such forces would manifest in wholly different ways. This principle of the medium as mediator finds profound resonance in the realm of quantum psychology. As human beings, we do not exist in isolation. Our medium is the complex matrix of relationships, cultural norms, socioeconomic conditions, and historical circumstances that surround us. This context shapes the way our internal, immovable convictions engage with external, unstoppable forces, influencing the outcomes in ways we often don't fully recognize. Consider, for instance, a deeply held belief about success, a conviction rooted in personal history, cultural values, or upbringing. In a society that celebrates relentless ambition and upward mobility, this belief might flourish as an immovable anchor, reinforced by external validation. The drive to achieve might seem unstoppable, propelling you forward in an environment that rewards constant striving. Now imagine a sudden shift in the medium. You relocate to a community where simplicity, sustainability, and minimalism are deeply valued. Here, the same drive for conventional achievement may encounter friction against cultural norms that prioritize contentment over ambition. Over time, this new context might erode the edges of your once inviolable belief about success, much like water reshaping stone. What once felt immovable begins to soften, opening pathways for growth, redefinition, and transformation. Quantum psychology emphasizes that just as particles cannot be fully understood outside their fields of interaction and entanglement, neither can human thoughts, emotions, or behaviors be separated from their environments. Our beliefs are deeply entwined with the medium in which they exist, shaped by interactions with people, communities, and cultural narratives. The so-called immovable and unstoppable forces of our inner lives are not fixed absolutes. They are deeply contextual, influenced by the medium through which they meet. This understanding offers us a profound tool for personal growth. By consciously altering the medium, whether through exposure to new ideas, relationships, or environments, we can change the way our internal and external forces interact. For example, traveling to unfamiliar places, immersing ourselves in different cultures, or shifting social circles can dramatically alter how we perceive the boundaries of what is possible. In doing so, we may discover that what once seemed like an irresolvable conflict between a rigid belief and a relentless challenge is actually a dynamic interplay, continually reshaped by the surrounding context. The medium teaches us a vital truth. The paradox of the immovable object and the unstoppable force is not a static standoff. It is a fluid, evolving interaction, shaped and guided by the conditions in which it takes place. By paying attention to the medium, we unlock the potential for transformation, not by forcing resolution, but by creating the conditions that allow new possibilities to emerge. In this way, context becomes not just a background condition, but a catalyst for growth, change, and the transcendence of apparent contradictions. To unravel the paradox of the immovable object and the unstoppable force, we turn to one of nature's most profound mediators, time. On its vast canvas, what appears eternal and unyielding is revealed to be fleeting and mutable. Even the most unbreakable stones eventually succumb to the patient persistence of wind and water, worn down grain by grain over millennia. Conversely, even the most relentless forces of nature, the raging river, the tireless winds, can dissipate, redirect, or evolve as their environment changes. By introducing time as a third element, the seeming clash of absolutes dissolves. Nothing in nature is truly immovable or unstoppable. These qualities are transient, observed only within the narrow window of a moment. Time teaches us that permanence is an illusion born of limited perspective. Consider a mountain range, standing as a symbol of immovability. On a human time scale, its peaks tower unchallenged, yet over eons these same mountains will crumble into valleys, their substance carried away by rivers to the sea. Similarly, think of a hurricane, its unstoppable energy tearing across land and ocean. It feels limitless in its fury, yet its winds will ultimately calm, its rains will cease, and its energy will disperse into the broader atmospheric system. Both the mountain and the hurricane embody immovability and unstoppable force, but only for a finite moment in the ongoing story of time. From the perspective of quantum psychology, time is equally transformative in the realm of the human psyche. What feels unchangeable within us, a long-standing fear, a deeply ingrained habit, a painful memory, can with time become malleable, lose its intensity, or even dissolve entirely. Imagine someone struggling with a self-destructive behavior that feels like an immovable object in their life. At one point it seems insurmountable, an eternal barrier to their well-being, yet over years, through small steps, shifting circumstances, or a series of personal insights, this behavior begins to change. What was once immovable softens, reshapes, and ultimately gives way to growth. Likewise, consider the unstoppable force of youthful passion. In our early years, a particular goal or belief might consume us entirely, driving us forward with relentless energy. Yet, as time unfolds, that same passion may mellow into a quieter, steadier commitment, or even fade into the background, making room for new priorities. This is not failure, but transformation. A recognition that the unstoppable force was never static but dynamic, evolving alongside us. Time also introduces the possibility of nonlinear change. Like quantum systems, which can remain in seemingly stable states until a triggering event causes an abrupt shift, human growth often unfolds unpredictably. A wound carried for decades might suddenly heal through a chance conversation or a seemingly minor life event. Conversely, patterns of behavior that seemed resolved may re-emerge when conditions align. Time does not only erode and soften, it also creates moments of sudden, radical transformation. The cosmic perspective further illuminates time's quiet power. Stars that burn brightly for millions of years eventually exhaust their fuel, collapsing into white dwarfs or exploding into supernovae. Galaxies, sprawling and vast, inevitably interact and collide, reshaping the cosmos on timescales we can scarcely comprehend. These transformations are reminders of the impermanence of all things, no matter how grand or enduring they may seem. Time, then, is not merely a backdrop against which the drama of immovable objects and unstoppable forces plays out. It is an active participant, a gentle yet unrelenting teacher. It reminds us that stasis and perpetual motion are snapshots, not constants. The paradox that seems unsolvable within a moment's frame melts away when viewed across the arc of time, replaced by an understanding that change is the only true constant. This recognition can be profoundly humbling and deeply comforting. It humbles us by showing how fleeting our certainties are, how even the most enduring aspects of our lives will eventually transform. Yet it comforts us by revealing that even our most unyielding struggles, our immovable pains and unstoppable anxieties will evolve, dissipate, or give way to new possibilities. Time invites us to let go of the need for immediate resolution and instead trust in the unfolding narrative of our lives, where transformation is not only possible but inevitable. The interactive perspective reframes the paradox of the immovable object and the unstoppable force, shifting the question from who prevails to what emerges. It invites us to see the meeting of these apparent opposites not as a confrontation leading to destruction or stasis, but as a dynamic encounter that births something entirely new, a process of transformation where the paradox itself becomes fertile ground for creation. Consider a river meeting a dam. At first glance, we might perceive an irresolvable standoff, the relentless flow of water colliding with the dam's unyielding barrier. Yet neither is truly defeated. Instead, their interaction generates a novel outcome, hydroelectric power, a new form of energy that neither the river nor the dam could produce alone. The river's unstoppable force is channeled, and the dam's immovability provides structure, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. The collision becomes less about opposition and more about synergy, dissolving the paradox into a transformative process. In the realm of quantum psychology, this perspective resonates deeply with the principle of entanglement, where interconnected systems influence each other in ways that cannot be reduced to their individual components. Within our inner world, such interactions often occur between seemingly unyielding emotional stances and the unstoppable momentum of external or internal challenges. Imagine someone who has carried a lifelong fear of vulnerability, a deeply entrenched emotional, immovable object. This fear is met by the unstoppable force of a transformative relationship, one that demands honesty, intimacy, and openness. At first, this clash might feel like a battle. Either the fear will fortify itself, driving the relationship away, or the relationship will overwhelm the fear, forcing vulnerability prematurely. But in many cases, neither happens. Instead, through the iterative process of dialogue, trust-building, and emotional risk-taking, something new emerges. The fear of vulnerability evolves into a nuanced understanding of boundaries and trust, while the relationship deepens, shaped by the honesty born from navigating that fear. The collision is not about one force overcoming the other, but about their mutual influence leading to growth and co-creation. This perspective pushes us beyond zero-sum thinking, where every interaction is framed as a win-lose scenario. It invites us to see conflict, tension, and contradiction as opportunities for generative outcomes. The unstoppable force, representing drive and momentum, provides the energy for change, while the immovable object, embodying stability and resistance, offers structure and grounding. Their meeting is not a standstill, but a crucible, a space where their interplay gives rise to something neither could achieve alone. In physics, interaction often creates phenomena that transcend the properties of the individual components. When waves meet, they can interfere to create entirely new patterns of motion. When subatomic particles collide, they can give birth to new particles or forms of energy. In quantum mechanics, the act of observation itself can alter the system being observed, underscoring the transformative potential inherent in interaction. Similarly, in human experience, the willingness to engage with apparent contradictions, to step into the space where resistance and momentum meet, can lead to profound personal and relational growth. Imagine two seemingly opposing forces within a community, one side advocating for rapid innovation and the other for preserving tradition. At first, their collision might seem irreconcilable, yet through interaction, dialogue, compromise, and mutual influence, a new vision may emerge that honors both the stability of tradition and the drive for progress. This is not a victory for one side or the other, but a co-creative outcome that transcends the original opposition. Ultimately, the principle of interaction reminds us that life's deepest paradoxes are rarely resolved through confrontation or domination. Instead, they are transformed through engagement, where the dynamic interplay of opposing forces creates emergent possibilities. This perspective calls us to embrace conflict as a necessary and fertile part of growth, to see collisions not as endings but as beginnings, and to recognize that the most profound resolutions often come not from choosing sides but from creating something entirely new. In the end, interaction is not about resolving the paradox by eliminating one side of the equation. It is about recognizing that the immovable object and the unstoppable force are not enemies but partners in creation. Together, they teach us that the richest and most meaningful aspects of life arise not from avoiding tension, but from stepping into it, fully present and willing to engage with the transformative power of the unknown. The paradox of the immovable object and the unstoppable force is more than a mental exercise. It's a metaphor for the profound tensions we encounter in our lives. We face seemingly immovable obstacles, our fears, habits, and deeply rooted beliefs. We also experience unstoppable forces, our ambitions, emotions, and the relentless march of time. At first glance, these opposites seem destined to clash in futile conflict. Yet, as we've explored tonight, these forces hold the potential not for destruction but for transformation. From energy transfer, we learn that when opposites collide, the resulting release of energy can catalyze growth. The discomfort of inner conflict isn't a sign of failure but a crucible for new insights and possibilities. Through relativity, we discover that absolutes like unstoppable and immovable are illusions of perspective. Shifting our vantage point can dissolve barriers and open new paths forward. The medium reminds us that context is everything. By reshaping the environment in which our challenges arise, we can influence the outcomes in ways we never imagined. Time teaches us patience and humility, revealing that even the most enduring challenges will evolve or fade given enough space. And finally, interaction shows us that the meeting of opposites isn't a battle to be won. It's a space of co-creation, where resistance and momentum intertwine to produce something entirely new. So, how can we carry these lessons into our lives? First, embrace conflict and tension not as threats but as opportunities. The moments when you feel most stuck, or when life's forces seem overwhelming, are often the moments that contain the seeds of your greatest growth. Instead of resisting these forces, engage with them. Ask yourself, what energy is being released here? How can I harness it creatively? Second, cultivate perspective. When you feel trapped by an immovable challenge, step back. Shift your frame of reference, seek out new perspectives, and challenge the absolutes in your thinking. The rigidity of your beliefs may soften, revealing solutions hidden by your previous vantage point. Third, attend to your medium. Surround yourself with environments, relationships, and experiences that support the transformation you seek. Remember, the context in which you live and act profoundly shapes the way forces meet and interact within you. Fourth, trust in time. Growth rarely happens overnight, and the solutions to life's paradoxes often emerge only after patience and persistence. Recognize that change is always happening, even if it's too subtle to see in the moment. And finally, embrace interaction. Step into the space where opposites meet, between fear and courage, resistance and momentum, certainty and doubt. Engage with these tensions not to resolve them, but to create something new. Life's richest possibilities emerge not from avoiding paradox, but from fully inhabiting it. The paradox of power, the meeting of immovable objects and unstoppable forces, is not a puzzle to be solved, but a dynamic to be lived. It is the dance of transformation that shapes our lives, teaches us to grow, and reminds us that every collision contains the potential for creation.